During my time in the domestic violence unit at Legal Aid, I saw things that are unimaginable. I saw levels of abuse that no one should ever see. Houses blowing up, an ear bitten off, ocular bone breakage, eye damage, arm damage, physical damage to people, abuse to children, or abuse that was witnessed by children. It's so imperative that action be taken. Post-COVID, a lot of people are contemplating divorce. A lot of people are contemplating their future. At this time, in Palm Beach County and Broward County, domestic violence cases are actually being heard in the courthouse. The petitions are being filed online, or they can be filed in the courthouse, but the actual final hearings are taking place in person in the courthouse. And that's because the importance and gravitas of the outcomes of those situations. Being in a domestic violence situation or having a loved one who is in a domestic violence situation can be terrifying. It can be really scary. There are so many decisions that go into whether or not to file a restraining order or an injunction. There are so many thoughts that go through a victim's head as to how to handle it. And one of the results of the amount of domestic violence that is out there is that there are so many resources for victims of domestic violence. There are so many advocates out there for victims of domestic violence, and so it's important that any victim of domestic violence get in touch with one of those advocates, whether it's an attorney to help file the petition for injunction, or an advocate at the courthouse, or an advocate at the police station. It's important to connect a victim of domestic violence with some kind of advocate to help them strategize, to help them safety plan more than ever. It's important that a victim of domestic violence has a safety plan. And that safety plan trickles all the way down to when and even if to file a restraining order or an injunction. It's not unusual for a victim of domestic violence not to file a petition for injunction, not to call the police, not to tell people, not to open up about it, because there's a lot of fear surrounding domestic violence. First and foremost, there's that physical fear that something's going to happen physically to the victim. And then there's a real financial fear for a lot of victims of domestic violence that ties them to their abuser. Because a survivor of domestic violence has to contemplate how they're going to support themselves. Sometimes, and a lot of times, it means moving out of the marital home. Sometimes it means abandoning your home, your things, in order to make your safety a priority. A lot of victims of domestic violence struggle with this concept of, how do I protect myself and my children when I'm financially tied to the abuser? When I was at the Legal Aid Society, I had the opportunity to represent some amazing survivors. And I call them survivors because they absolutely survived. They stood up for themselves. We were able to get them injunctions. They were able to move on with their lives. If you're in a situation where there's violence and abuse, call our office, get a confidential, complimentary consultation. That phone call could be the one thing that saves your life and the life of your children.